We've got some questions we need answered about Syracuse football. Hopefully, we get those answers on Saturday at 8 p.m. Locked On Syracuse starts right now.
Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your Thursday episode with Owen Valentine. I am Matt Bonaparte. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. I'm pretty excited. Syracuse football only 2 days away now. Saturday night, 8 p.m. in the JMA Dome. Get used to saying that. It's going to be exciting. Syracuse taking on a team that has just pulverized them seemingly every time they play them, but really it's just the last 2 years. Last 3 times they've played, it was at Louisville, so it's kind of nice to have it at the Dome this time around. So this is all exciting. If you're going, let us know. We'd love to hear about that. Owen, are you going?
TBD. I said 85% yesterday. I'm going to say 88% today. Seems more likely.
Uptick.
But I have some people coming into town on Saturday, so I might have to get dragged away. Regardless.
That's only 12% chance you get dragged away, though.
I know. I will fight to be in the Dome. The JMA Wireless Dome. I will fight to be there on Saturday night for a season opener. And based on what I'm seeing with some ticket charts, it seems like a lot of people will be there. So exciting little home opener.
Yes, I saw those Red X tweets. Looks good.
Yeah, definitely. Cheap tickets, right? If you're looking for a seat, I think it was like 40-yard line for $12 today.
Cool.
So you don't have to break the piggy bank open for this. Just take a 20 and have yourself a good time at the Dome on Saturday night.
Yeah. And get ready tomorrow. We've got an exciting interview coming, so gear up for that. We'll be detailing everything about the Louisville Cardinals with the U of L sideline reporter, so that should be very exciting. But hey, let's jump right into today's episode, your Thursday episode. We're asking questions today. Yesterday, we said this is what we want to see. Today, we asked the hard-hitting questions of what's this and what's that and blah, blah, blah. We've talked about what are the big question marks on this team. Now we kind of make those a little bit more specific. First one up is, and I actually think this is the most important question, how much trust can be won or lost by the defense in this game? The defense coming into this year, probably just aside from the 3 guys on the line, is arguably the most sound it's been maybe in 5 years since like Andrew Armstrong and Kendall Coleman and Alton Robinson were locking things down. Like, I think they have arguably a better defense this year than they did in 2018.
Wow. Hello.
I'm not saying it for 100% fact, but I'm saying like it could end up like that, which is something you couldn't say in the last 2 or 3 years.
No, it definitely has the capabilities to, and I think Louisville is a good battle and a good test in week 1 that really says, how good is this defense actually? We see the names. We see you're bringing back a tremendous amount of players. You bring back the whole linebacking core. Your secondary has so much experience. The defensive line, yes, there's some questions, but it seems like they've got some competence. They've got some spark, and they have the capabilities to be pretty good this year. They definitely have the pieces. But Louisville has a very, very good offense, as we discussed yesterday, as I'm sure we'll discuss tomorrow as we go into our Louisville interview and preview in a little bit more depth. But this defense has a ton to prove in week 1 because of what you just said. This is a team that has a defense that could be in a conversation with the levels it was at in 2018 if some things work out, if some of these questions that we're going to look at today find their answers in favor of the Orange. I think a ton of trust can be won in this game for the Syracuse defense. I'm not 100% sure how much can be lost. I think if the lost trust is in this game, it is going to be on the defensive line, which is, not to preview the next question, but might be in our list of questions today. I think a lot more trust can be won in week 1 for Syracuse's defense than can be lost. And I think that's because this Louisville offense really is a tough test. You look at their offensive line that has 4 returning starters, and they bring in a Virginia Tech transfer at center. So they have a very, very solid offensive line, not to mention Malik Willis, not to mention the 4-pronged running back system that they can pull through and look at. They've got options. They've got a ton of transfers at receiver as well, some guys that have made some flashes in their spring camp or their preseason camp. There are a lot of really offensive sparks that this Louisville team has, all sitting behind a very, very strong offensive line. So you are starting with a litmus test if you're the Syracuse defense, and I think that a lot will be taken away and a lot can be said after this initial game for the Oranges D.
Sure. And I see that, but it's games like the 2019 opener against Liberty where they won 24-zip. Josh Black had like 4 sacks or something. They didn't allow a point, of course. That gives me a little bit of worry about how much they can win in terms of trust. Because after that game, everyone thought Syracuse's defense was phenomenal. And they're coming off 2018. So people think Syracuse are great. They're ranked 22nd in the country at the time, I believe. And
Yeah.
they're going into the Maryland game thinking, okay, we're going to win this, and then next week we go back home for game day against Clemson at the Dome.
Yeah.
That was the mindset after that game, after that Liberty game. Obviously, then Maryland just absolutely destroys SU. Arguably the worst loss of Dino's tenure, I think it was. And it all went downhill. So I don't know how much I'll trust them. Obviously, if they won 21-0 against Louisville, it's different than winning against Liberty. It's a lot more of an accomplishment. But
Yes.
still, week 1, everything is a little hazy, and you never know really what's going to happen. So, because, 3 weeks down the line, if Syracuse were to win 24-0, it would be fantastic. But say 3 weeks down the line, maybe you find out that Louisville's team wasn't really all that good, and that offense can't put points up against anybody or something like that. Not saying that's the case, just putting in hypothetical. So they could play really well, and I'd be happy about that, and they would gain some trust, but I wouldn't just put all my eggs in the defense's basket if they won big and didn't allow a lot of points. Now, on the other side of that coin, they can lose a ton of trust. If they just get blown out immediately, I'm thinking, okay, well, they stink. So, I mean, I guess it's not really fair in that aspect because they can't win as much as they can lose, but, that's just how it is.
I got to look at this though, and I see this, and you hinted at it, but there is a lot more in terms of what this game can show than that Liberty game did. I mean, that's a pre-Malik Willis being that guy Liberty team that's not great. And that was, the discrepancy that you expected at that point in time when Syracuse was playing Liberty and playing teams of that caliber in 2019. They come out, they have an unreal start. There was that hype. And yes, it was the wrongful hype. I think that if Syracuse comes out and plays a really solid defensive game against Louisville, that all of the hype that they got against Liberty will be warranted this time around, and it will show that this defense is legit and can hold with top teams in the ACC possibly if they catch them on a good day. And I think that this Louisville offense is good enough to walk away from this game if you can hold Louisville to 25 or fewer points or 21 points, that you can really walk away from that game and say, wow, this defense is as advertised. Some of these questions that we might have had going into the season have been answered, and we can really, really confidently say that this team can be carried if the offense doesn't work out to perfection immediately, that this team can be carried by a little bit more of an experienced Tony White defense.
Sure. I see what you're saying. Okay, before we ask the next one, let me just take a quick break to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts. Okay, Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine, asking some hard hitting questions here ahead of Syracuse's matchup with Louisville at home to start the year in week one this Saturday. First, we talked about the defense. We're going to stick with that vein. How much can we expect from the defensive line? Can they get it done against a quarterback that diced them up last year? And like we said yesterday, pretty underratedly, very low key game from Malik Cunningham. Maybe had the quietest 5 touchdowns in the
Yeah.
country that day. He was fantastic, but the box score is like, yeah, I think 230 total yards and 3 touchdowns. Like that's nuts. Or 5 touchdowns, excuse me.
Yeah.
Um, what can we expect from the D line? I mean, you're going to have two guys who have little experience compared to one guy who has no experience. So you've got Okachukwu and Terry Lockett that have little experience, Jatius Gear that's got none. So it's going to be interesting, but it's also going to be extremely telling. Like you're going to know right after that game what the defensive line, or at least a little bit of what the defensive line is going to be this year. Of course, it'll take a couple games, a couple of weeks to really see what the um, personality of the team's defense is, but you'll know what you have in those defenders on that line week one.
I agree, and I think that it's very important to keep an eye on this, and hence why it's on our list of questions. And I could barely answer the first question without hinting at this being a major question mark going into week one. When you look at the lack of experience, as you were talking about, I think that that's something that will definitely be at play here. And when we look into what we can actually expect from this D line, I don't think we can by any means expect perfection or anything close to that. There will be mistakes in this game. What I want and what I hope from this defensive line is that those mistakes are things that can be quickly fixed or quickly helped by the three experienced guys that are standing pretty close to you in the linebacking core that has that experience. So if your mistakes are, smaller things that can be easily recovered from, and your mistake results in a 4-yard rush, instead of maybe a stop at the line of scrimmage or something like that, I can get over that. It's the big time mistakes that I don't want to see. So when it comes to expectations, I think you're going to see probably a couple of moments where maybe you can tell that this defensive line doesn't have that experience. I think you can also expect to see the possibility of someone like Dennis Jacques Jr. or Chase Simmons slipping in there as well, especially if there are some early going mistakes or things that don't look outstanding from that defensive line. I think, yes, Okachukwu, Lockett, and Gear are your top three right now, but I don't think that means that you should sit there without asking a single question about them. I'm fine with you rotating in, seeing, hey, Jacques Jr. has a little bit more size. Yes, he's a true freshman. Same with Chase Simmons, both with a little bit more size than a guy like Jatius Gear. So if Gear is not perfect, or they're smaller than Lockett and Okachukwu, but if they you rotate them through if you need to, give those other looks, see if you need to mix things up. And I think that should be involved in the expectation with this defensive line, that yes, there are questions around this. That's why we're asking them. You can expect them to make some decent plays. You can expect them to have some not quite what you were exactly looking for. And you can expect them to be trying some things out because, as you mentioned, there is very, very limited experience in this trio that is going to start on the line.
And I think that this year we have a defensive line that we're looking at that doesn't have a standout guy. And
Yeah.
I don't know when the last time that was. Like maybe 2016 when like Chris Slayton was the only guy that you kind of looked at that was like that dude. Zaire Franklin's a linebacker. Like Paris Bennett was there, but like um, he's also a linebacker. It wasn't really like you didn't have a defensive end that you were looking at. Like you had Kendall Coleman and Alton Robinson for a really
Yeah.
long time. Brandon Barry, even like you didn't really have like a season like this one where it's anybody's job, really. It's anybody's
Yeah.
game. Last year, honestly, was the closest thing to it where Josh Black was your guy, but
Mm-hmm.
he kind of got outplayed. McKinley Williams got outplayed. Cody Roscoe came out of nowhere. Terry Lockett got some snaps. Um, so it was kind of a who comes out of the woodworks year last year. I think that's what we could be looking at this year as well. just because the week 1 depth chart has these 3 guys at the front does not mean by any means that that's what next week or maybe 5 weeks down the line is going to look like. So I don't know what we can expect from the D line, but they will show us on Saturday at least a little bit what the answer to that is. Okay.
Yeah, one more quick thing, if I
Sure,
can
go
jump
ahead.
back for just I mean, this is as tough a test as you'll get in terms of quarterback mobility. You don't want to use the comparison because it's such a low-hanging fruit, but this is like Lamar Jackson is the comp for Malik for Malik Cunningham
Yeah.
here. Like that is the type of quarterback that you are going to be facing. And when you have a quarterback that is that mobile and so quick to move and so quick to scramble, at times to a fault, where he puts himself into tougher situations because of how quickly he might tuck that ball, your linebackers have quite a day ahead of them. So I think you want to expect and you hope that this defensive line can hold their own and not need to rely on the linebackers all too much, and the secondary at that, because of how difficult it is to contain Malik Willis and how difficult it is to keep him in check, given how quickly and how easily he can just slip out the side. So we can expect them to have a lot of pressure on their shoulders as well.
Totally. Okay. Let's move on. What do we expect? What do we expect from Aronde Gadsden at tight end? Now, this honestly, I think is going to be one of the most exciting parts of the season.
Yeah.
Syracuse finally coming back to using a tight end. Sterling Gilbert not using a tight end was some of the most painful football everybody had to go through. I mean, that was brutal. And
Yeah.
if Sean Tucker never showed up, I don't know where this program would be, because that offense in 2020 was dreadful. So Aronde Gadsden, who everybody prior to a couple days ago when the depth chart came out, thought was a wide receiver. He came in as a wide receiver. His dad was a wide receiver in the NFL. This is a wide receiver. He's 6'5", 216. That's not really a tight end's body. But depth chart comes out, and lo and behold, tight end 1 is Aronde Gadsden the second. So I'm excited to see what he's doing, but I'm more excited that the offense is drifting back into that realm.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that I always think back when I think of Sterling Gilbert's offense is the lack of men in motion as well. And I think that's something that you could definitely see Gadsden doing a lot, is being a guy in motion in that tight end spot, just because of, the wide receiver experience and the way that Robert and I has used the tight end, or as, Stephen Bailey alluded to when we talked about in our depth chart reaction, in a funky way. Like, it is more than just your traditional tight end. It is a really, really highly used position, historically, at least at Virginia, in terms of the offense that Robert and I runs. So this is something that I have been incredibly curious about, and I cannot wait until Saturday to see what happens, because as we talked about too, a guy like Keaton Thompson, I always get that confused because I want to say Eton Thompson, but Keaton Thompson, who was the tight end / flex guy that they had at Virginia, was used in so many different capacities. I think he might have lined up at virtually every spot a receiver or tight end could line up in his last season at Virginia, and that is something that you could see. Gadsden, you're going to just want to look every time Syracuse comes set for where number 19 is, because he literally could be anywhere in that offense. He could be in the backfield, probably. He could be lined up as a traditional, tight end in the slot, out wide. Like, there are so many different spots. If, Stephen Bailey is correct, as I assume he is, based on him just being a football guru compared to the two of us in his knowledge base, if he is anything like Keaton Thompson and how he was used at Virginia, you are going to see him probably in week 1 against Louisville in 5 different spots lining up before the snap. And I think that is why I'm so excited to see the answer to this question, because it really could be so many different things. And I think week 1's answer could be very different from week 2's answer, and very different from every week's answer out of how Aronde Gadsden is used in this new offense.
And how about him having a role that I doubt he thought he was going to have? Like he has
Not a
so
chance
much
he thought
more.
this was
He has
happening.
so much more of an interesting role this season than he thought he was going to. Like he probably
Yes.
rolled into training camp thinking he was going to be like wide receiver 6 or 5, and he now is going to be tight end 1. Like that's so cool. Kind of surprised they didn't try to stick Valari there. I don't know necessarily how big he is, but they did move him to wide receiver. So, and that's something we've seen before with Culpepper. So who knows?
He's
But
got a
hey,
lot to learn. Maybe
yeah, absolutely,
mid-season, end of the season, you'll see a little bit.
yeah. Okay, well that does it for the Gadsden talk. Our last question is: are we going to be able to trust a punter? Okay, last year we're coming off Sterling Hoffrichter, who is now the punter for. Did he get waived by the Falcons, or is he still there?
I thought he was in
Currently,
Miami now.
is he?
I
Maybe he's in
someone he's
Miami,
affiliated with moved to
but
Miami, so
he's
I
an
assume
NFL punter.
he's there
So
too,
this man is an NFL punter. Oh, it says he's a free agent right now. Maybe he's in the practice squad. But
possibly.
anyway, you go from an NFL punter to whatever we saw that was last year's punt team. I mean, that was brutal. James
Right?
Williams, go ahead.
They had the patented punter U.
Yeah,
They had
PU.
punter U. It was established, and DBU has taken over so quickly because of how bad that it was for the brief stint since you saw Hoffrichter leave. It is no longer punter U right now, and there is going to need to be some reclaiming of that throne because right now it is historically punter U, but now it is not currently punter U. You've got to reclaim because DBU at Syracuse University is taking over the punter U mantra, and they have done so very, very quickly.
Oh, I mean, I'm just hoping that the man from Wagga Wagga,
Oh
Maximilian
yeah,
von Marburg, he's going to make the first punt on Saturday. He's listed at number 1 on the depth chart. I'm confident he makes the first punt. There is an or next to his name, but he's on top. I'm taking him as the punter. Um, I'm just hoping he can come in. Like this kid's a true freshman. He's a serious looking guy in terms of whatever his headshot looks like. I'm just hoping. I mean, this guy went to like punting academy in Australia or Wales. No, Australia. Yeah, South Wales, Australia. That's what I was getting confused of. I just want a guy like there should be no reason that we have to be worried when the punter is on the field, and that's what it was like when Williams was on the field last year. When he got out there, it was like, oh my god, just kick it forward, dude. Like I remember the first one, it was just like was was that was that us? Like that was it was
who
terrible.
was that? An
So
overthrow?
I'm just hoping that this man, for the visual podcast enjoyers, who he's on the
He
screen right
looks
now,
like a
I'm hoping
bomb
that this
villain.
man can make a difference. He looks serious. He's serious about his job.
Yeah, I hope he leads to something.
Yeah, I just hope
I
Syracuse has
hope
better
so.
special teams, I guess.
Former soccer player.
Yeah, man. Imagine he comes out. It's fantastic. He's from Wagga Wagga. He went to St. Mary Macalop College's Wagga. I mean, come on. That's awesome.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see the first punt. And best case scenario, Syracuse doesn't punt.
Well,
But in the
doubt
inevitable
that
event
happens.
that they do, granted this isn't a Bills Patriots playoff game in last year where you're not going to punt ever. You're going to see Max von Marburg come out and take that first punt. And I think you're correct in the fact that him being listed first, he's going to walk out there first. And I think he will punt until it is shown that he shouldn't. If that happens, then you will see James Williams pop up and give it a shot. But I think it's Von Marburg's spot right now, at least in coming out against Louisville. It is his spot unless he shows that it really shouldn't be. And that is when that sort of two-pronged system or back and forth ordeal might begin. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that Syracuse has a competent punter and has some solid. I'm just thinking about my golf game right now. I can't putt. and it was just a default. So I said a competent putter because I can't be a competent putter. But hopefully Syracuse has a confident punter, so
And
that they
no,
don't have to deal with the fact that it's always in my head that I
all right,
can't putt, and it
it's
makes me a
okay, big
worse
guy.
putter. So Von Marburg's got to come out and say, yes, I can punt the ball, and punt the ball like he knows how to punt the ball,
And
and then I
you know
won't have
what?
to talk about
No
punting versus
more
putting ever
specialty
again.
punts. No more
No,
specialty punts. That was so stupid. When Dina was like, "Oh, we tried out a specialty punt. Just punt the ball, dude.
punt the
Like
ball.
it shouldn't be in the stands, okay? Just make it go that way." All right. Anyway, that's all we got. Um, we will see you for that interview tomorrow. But before we go, I say thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. Go make your second listen the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you
Woo!
ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Owen and I back tomorrow with an interview previewing week 1. We will see you then.